Actually, there was one, Eli Martell. I recall in a night sitting where Eli Martell initially refused to leave, and they adjourned the House and called in Bob Elgie.
Switch on there.
He was a good friend of Martell's and chatted with him and convinced him to leave.
So today, this seems a little bit different from when Alvin Curling did it. I think Alvin's was more under the rules, but how do you look at this one? I'd have to look back at the story I wrote when Alvin did it.
Curling's was done in the middle of a vote, and he abstained from participation in the vote, as I recall it, and so it was different in that sense. But I think the reality is it's still you're still disobeying or ignoring the will of the speaker, and so in that sense they're both similar.
Is it really worth losing 2 votes in the House? I mean, if those 2 members are gone until prorogation, you're going to lose them for the remainder of the session. I mean, that's a pretty big deal for a 25-member caucus.
It is a big deal, but the reality is that we had a discussion prior to this occurring, and the reality is that the government isn't listening to us. I mean, we're seeing this not only in the legislature in question period, we're seeing it in votes. I mean, we're dealing with a majority government that's not prepared to listen to the opposition, let alone the public. So I think the calculation is that we are prepared to lose a number of members. Because at the end of the day, the result is going to be the same.
Are you guys on the same page on this? It seemed like that was telling Hillier to leave, and Hillier was bent on staying there. It seemed like kind of a bit of division inside here.
Well, I wouldn't say there was a division. I think that Randy is a free spirit, and he felt strongly as was sitting beside Bill that he wanted to support Bill by refusing to depart.
So are you but that wasn't part of the plan, was it? I mean, I think the plan was to have Murdoch do this, but was Hillier part of the script?
Well, we're all part of supporting Bill and trying to drive home the message that this government is refusing to allow public hearings on the biggest sales tax hike in the province's history, and that's the bottom line. We're all here to support each other, and I think you're seeing that today.
Are you trying to upset only the government or also your constituents? Because of course they're going to see that on TV and they're going to say, well, those guys can't work. We send them there.
You know, I think if we see, judged on the reaction when we left the question period, I think people realize that the Progressive Conservative Caucus is fighting as hard as we possibly can to force this government to do the right thing. The right thing is to have public hearings. If they're so convinced that this is in the best interest of Ontario, why will they not separate the HST element from this finance bill, have full public hearings? They've got 6 months until the tax comes into effect, and that's the message. And I think people generally are very supportive. I think they appreciate that we have very limited tools available to us as an opposition party to try and have this government listen not just to us but to the public. So these are drastic measures, but it's one of the very few options available to us.
Well, even at the risk of alienating the voters.
Well, I think that's a judgment call that we all make, and I think when it's explained to the public that this is one of the very, very few options available to us, and we're trying to exercise them all. I think Tim Hudak, when the legislation was introduced, indicated that we were going to do everything within our power to stop this legislation and to ensure that full public hearings occurred across the province. So I think we're following through on a commitment that Tim made when the legislation was introduced.
Bob, you're a lover of this place and of the rules and of the respect for the institutions here. What do you think of this kind of defiance of the Speaker?
Well, I think it's unfortunate that it's come to this. I mean, certainly we're not appreciative of Alvin Curling's efforts a number of years ago, but the bottom line is that Curling's efforts resulted in public hearings on Bill 26, if you recall that, Sean. And that's what we're trying to accomplish here is public hearings province-wide. And we have to look at what's available to us to try and persuade the government that it's the right thing to do. There's a track record here in terms of success with Curling's initiative. So as uncomfortable as some of us who love this place and love the traditions of this place are with what's happening, again, with the limited tools available to us, we have to utilize them all because the government has not been prepared to compromise on this in any way, shape, or form.
What is this going to do for the respect for the legislature?
You know, that's hard to gauge. I think if you take a look at the curling episode, I mean, curling ultimately became the Speaker of the Legislature. He was named as an ambassador to a Caribbean country. The individuals, if you take a look at the old pictures surrounding Alvin Curling, Sean Conway, Jim Bradley, a number of others who became prominent members of the Liberal government. So I guess if you base the future on a little bit of what's happened in the past, I think that the public, if they're strongly opposing something like this, tend to be, I think, more understanding. And I think in this instance versus Bill 26, I think the public is much more understanding that we're trying to stop the biggest sales tax increase in the history of this province. And they, I think, recognize that we're going to use whatever tools are available to us, as difficult as they may be to utilize sometimes.
You didn't just say that Bill Murdoch is ministrable, right? Is that what I heard?
Did you say what was that?
That Bill Murdoch is minister material. Is that what you just said?
I didn't get into that at all.
That's what I heard.
No, I didn't get into that at all.
Can you just remind us that Parliament, because I wasn't here at the time, was Alvin actually named? He was named and refused to go?
That's right.
So he stayed there all night.
18 hours.
But he was joined by the NDP.
That I can't recall. I think he was supported by the NDP, but if you take a look at the pictures of the time, he was surrounded by only Liberal members.
Kind of the second wave here now. Could you possibly repeat some of your feelings about what's going on today?
Well, I think we have very few tools available to us as an opposition to encourage the government to have full public hearings on the largest sales tax increase in the history of this province. What they're doing later today is bringing in effectively closure on the debate. They're limiting the opportunity for the opposition 45 minutes, each party, and then they're going to have 1 day of public hearings only, and only in Toronto. I mean, this is the biggest sales tax grab in the province's history, and we believe that the people of this province should have a right to be heard. They should have a right to hear the explanations from the government, the arguments of those that it's going to impact, and they're refusing to do that. So we're using one of the very few tools available to us to express our disdain for the government, the use of their majority hammer to close down debate, and not just shut off the opposition, but completely shut out the public.
Thank you very much.
Okay.